Well, Paul, can I thank you for such a generous welcome to country. I'm not sure how everyone else feels, but I absolutely love to hear language and the Yidaki playing in this marvellous place. Can I also just say very clearly that CEDA is strong supporters of an agenda that enables First Nations prosperity, and that I hope we all heard Paul's call for mutual respect and dignity. Thank you all for joining us, both here in the room and online. I'm Melinda Salento. I'm the CEO of CEDA, the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, and I'll be your host for this morning's discussions. Can I thank our breakfast sponsors, Indigenous Business Australia. They've been lead members of CEDA's for some time now, and this is the third year that they've been sponsoring our State of the Nation breakfast. Can I welcome the Prime Minister? Prime Minister, it's always great to have you here to kick off our event. I think it goes without saying, but it really sets the scene for the conversations that follow, and we greatly appreciate your support for this event and for CEDA more broadly. There's plenty of other dignitaries in the room, and I apologise if I'm not going to call you out. I know I'll miss one of you, but thank you all for being here. Can I call out the CEDA board, most of the members who are here with us today? They spend their extra time supporting our work, and the team and I are greatly appreciative of that. We've also got some State Advisory Council members here. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us in Canberra. As always, we love it when the media joins us, takes the message from this room to a wider audience, and particular thank you to Charles Croucher, who you will see on stage shortly. For everyone else, you know that part of the contract, if you like, for being in the room with us is that you have to participate. We love it. Your questions really make a difference to our events. So you can do that, of course, by accessing our Pigeonhole app via the conference app, and hopefully access details will be on the stage, but the Pigeonhole password is SON 2026. You can also use the conference app to see who else is in the room and connect with them. Now, let me just quickly run through what the format is for this morning. David Knights, CEO of Indigenous Business Australia, will formally introduce the Prime Minister and invite him to address the audience. Following his address, the Prime Minister will be joined on stage by Charles Croucher, Chief Political Editor at the Nine Network, for a discussion and to answer some of your questions. Immediately following, the Prime Minister has very kindly agreed to present a number of CEDA prizes, after which breakfast will be served. So that'll give you a sense of what's in store for the next little while. And can you now please join me in welcoming David Knights to the stage.
Thank you, Melinda. Good morning, all. I respectfully acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and Ngambri people and the other First Nations families and communities with close connections to this land, and I extend that to all First Nations people here today. I'd also like to thank Paul House for his very warm welcome this morning. I also acknowledge today our Prime Minister, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, and fellow ministers in attendance today. Indigenous Business Australia is the longest-running economic development program that has shaped and supported Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander economic interests for the last 50 years, proudly supporting over 22,000 families to buy their first home. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander economic interests are vital to Australia's future and will play a central role in the national development, especially in the latter half of this century. The demographic dividend of First Nations people is significant, and within 2 decades may comprise 4 to 7% of the Australian population. Today we have approximately 1 million First Nations peoples, with 60% under the age of 30. The Indigenous estate covers around 70% of Australia's landmass, shaping economic and national outcomes across the country. At IBA, we recognise that Indigenous people frameworks and systems have a critical role in driving the direction of productivity and innovation. It is our job in this room to listen to and heed First Nations voices on the best approach for our shared future. These are the foundations of a future economy where First Nations people are partners and leaders. Achieving this requires trust and a shared commitment to economic opportunity. The recent establishment of the Office of the Indigenous Economy within IBA is designed to help shape capital inflows to Indigenous Australia through data-driven research to reduce investment uncertainty of the Indigenous estate. Demand for capital and investment-ready projects is accelerating at an unprecedented pace. We estimate there is over $100 billion in capital demand from First Nations communities, businesses and families over the next 5 years alone. So firstly, we need productive country. To unlock First Nations-led development, we must get engagement right by strengthening land and sea rights, protecting country and culture, and enabling finance that recognises the value of native title and Indigenous land rights. While others have hesitated, IBA brings proven experience in this space. This leads to the second point, productive capital. Access to finance remains a major barrier, including early stage funding, fair credit assessment and an appropriate cost of capital. Blended finance combining public, corporate and private capital will scale investment while ensuring First Nations people retain decision-making power in line with their own economic interests. This underpins long-term regional and national prosperity. And thirdly, capacity, productive communities. Economic development is more than capital. It's about the people, the skills and governance. First Nations organisations need the capability and planning tools to lead the next phase of nation building, including essential infrastructure and capability in both Indigenous and the non-Indigenous sectors grounded in trust. Country, capital and communities are interdependent. Together they underpin a stronger, more productive and inclusive economy. CEDA plays a crucial role in advancing and strengthening the Australian economy, and their commitment to inclusive growth resonates with the mission of the IBA. The importance of the $16 billion Indigenous economic sector is highlighted in the 2026 CEDA State of the Nation Goal 5, titled Disadvantage and Opportunity. I thank CEDA for convening this important discussion, and I wish you all well on a conversation that will shape our nation. Which brings me to my task this morning, to introduce our Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has been clear in his commitment to building a future where First Nations economic participation is central to our national growth. His government's work on economic partnerships, expanding IBA's legislative remit, modernising the frameworks that enable investment and strengthening the institutions that support First Nations development is critical to Australia realising the opportunities in front of us. It's now my great pleasure to introduce the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese.
Well, thank you very much, David, and to Melinda as well. It is fantastic to be back here at, I'm not sure how many CEDA addresses I've done. Someone can Google it, I'm sure, and work out what it is, but it's quite a few. And this is an essential part of now our national calendar in Parliament House. I want to also begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and pay my respect to elders, past, present and emerging, and thank my friend, the wonderful Paul House, for his welcome to country. Every year, CEDA's State of the Nation conference invites all of us caught up in the busy rush of a parliamentary sitting week to take a breath, to zoom out from the day-to-day, hour by hour, minute by minute political contest and look to the longer term. CEDA frames its work around the Australia of 2050. In our democracy, where 3-year terms are short and the media cycle is a fair bit shorter than that, when there are always new challenges emerging and different issues competing for attention, a quarter century into the future can seem impossibly distant. But the Australia of 2050 is not a remote prospect. Our future prosperity, growth and productivity will be shaped by changes underway around our world right now. The global shift to clean energy, the transformative impact of artificial intelligence, the use of international supply chains as instruments of economic and strategic competition, and every bit as importantly, the Australia of 2050 will be defined by how we respond to this changing world. Because if we act now, if we back ourselves, if we work together to shape the future, rather than waiting for the future to shape us, then Australia can do more than find a way through this period of global uncertainty. We can emerge stronger, fairer, more resilient and more prosperous. We can build on our global leadership in clean energy and use it to power a new generation of Australian manufacturing. We can bring our national values of fairness and opportunity to AI so that it grows our economy and strengthens our sovereignty without fragmenting our society or damaging our natural environment. And we can own our place in the architecture of the fastest growing region of the world in human history, stabilising our relationship with China, deepening our investment in Southeast Asia, elevating our ties with India, making ourselves the security partner of choice for the Pacific. And the report that CEDA published this week is right. Australia cannot drift our way into those opportunities. We have to actually go out there and seize them. And just as the choices we make today will shape the decades ahead, we must also deal with the consequences of choices made decades ago. The reforms that we intend to pass through the Parliament today will help correct the negative consequences of tax changes that were made in 1999. The changes that John Howard and Peter Costello made to capital gains tax and its interaction with negative gearing were supposed to boost investment in the share market. Instead, they turbocharged property as an investment vehicle. So while the percentage of Australians who own shares has actually fallen compared to a quarter of a century ago, house prices have risen by 400% in the same period, more than twice as fast as incomes. We know supply is a key part of the solution, which is why we've thrown absolutely everything at it over the last 4 years. Our $47 billion Homes for Australia plan has provided new incentives for the states to speed up approvals and unlock land, new funding for connecting infrastructure, free TAFE and $10,000 payments for construction and electrical apprenticeships, building new social and affordable housing through the Housing Australia Future Fund, Help to Buy, Build to Rent and 5% deposits. All of this has made a difference. Yet there were still too many young Australians who were doing everything right. They're working hard, they're making sacrifices, but they're missing out at auctions because property investors could outbid them, knowing that they had those tax breaks, giving them an advantage over owner-occupiers. Now, the easy political option in that situation is to kick the can down the road, to try and explain away or work around a system that simply is not working. And while that might be the easy choice, it's certainly not the right one. The privilege of serving in government demands more of you than that. It's not enough to acknowledge people's frustration. You have to actually act on it. You can't just nod along while young Australians tell you that the deck is stacked against them. You have to do something to give them a fair crack. That is the choice that our government has made. And when we embarked on this journey, we did not imagine for a moment that it would all be smooth sailing. Change is hard. We knew there would be the usual political attacks. Some of us remember the campaign that argued that the introduction of the fringe benefits tax would shut the doors of every restaurant, every pub and every hospitality venue in the country. Equally, we understood there would be consultation required and improvements to make. We specifically flagged that in the budget papers, which is why, in addition to retaining all 4 capital gains tax concessions for small business, we've also expanded the threshold for the most frequently used carve-out to cover all businesses with up to $10 million in turnover, consistent with the way small businesses are treated across a range of measures. Now, that represents 98% of all active businesses in the nation. But importantly, every active small business in Australia. In addition to this, in the months ahead, we'll continue to consult with the startup sector on a new innovative business CGT concession. All of these improvements are a credit to the constructive engagement of the business community. That's the way my government operates, and it's the way that reform should work. Consensus does not mean beginning with 100% agreement or arriving at it. It means listening, negotiating, and moving forward to an outcome. And that's what we'll continue to do right across our agenda. Yet, as with last year's reforms to the EPBC Act, where it was obvious the system wasn't working for anyone, the opposition have chosen irrelevance and have dealt themselves out of the process. And this time around, they've gone beyond defending a status quo that is failing people. They're now promising to reimpose it, to bring back the distortions that have locked young people out of the housing market. They want to repeat the mistakes of decades past. We're fixing them in housing and right across the economy, because the global turbulence of the 2020s has exposed the mindset which told Australians it was smart and rational and efficient to offshore manufacturing, to cut skills and TAFE, to close refineries, to narrow our industrial base and privatise national assets, because the stable, predictable expansion of globalisation would pick up the slack. That someone else, somewhere else, would be able to sell us what we needed cheaper than we could make it ourselves. It is crystal clear that the old economic model is not suited to the real world that we are in, nor fit for the future ahead. The Australia of 2050 will be shaped by what we build in its place, by the lessons we learn from what the world has thrown at us, by the action we take to seize the opportunities that the world holds for us, and by the reforms we drive to deliver real change. Boosting productivity is critical to this, and that's why we're cutting red tape, speeding up approvals and abolishing hundreds of nuisance tariffs, creating a single national market for skills so state borders don't stand in the way of businesses finding and hiring the right workers. All of this is about incentivising business investment and converting that into stronger growth and better wages. The national accounts show that business investment as a share of the Australian economy is at its highest level in nearly a decade. Australia is growing faster than almost every advanced major economy, and that growth is being led by the private sector. We're building an economy that is more productive and more resilient, so we're better prepared for the next global shock and better placed to make the most of our natural advantages, combining Australian ideas and Australian skills to turn the traditional resources, critical minerals and rare earths that the world needs into products that the world wants. Above all, our goal is to build an economy that works for people, not the other way around, one that upholds our national values of fairness, opportunity and aspiration for all. That is the optimism, the determination and the belief in Australia that underpins our government's agenda, even those in these times of global uncertainty. It is quite extraordinary to think that in the 2020s, Australians have already had to deal with 4 global crises in 6 years. A once-in-a-century pandemic, the highest global inflation since the 1980s, a land war in Europe leading to the biggest international energy crisis since the 1970s, and the biggest spike in petrol and diesel prices ever as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And I'd be interested even in a group as with the intellectual capacity of CEDA. How many people here could have found the Strait of Hormuz on a global map at the beginning of this year? But we know that events around the world are putting pressure on inflation right here and having an impact right here. I understand that for workers and businesses trying to manage the combined impact of these economic shocks, planning for the future can sound like a luxury. But in a world of rapid change, our country cannot wait and hope for a moment of calm and quiet before we look ahead, even though that would be nice. Instead, we have to deal with the challenges of the here and now in a way that anticipates and creates the future that we want to build. That is the approach that defines our government. You've seen it again through this global fuel crisis, helping Australians under immediate pressure by working with the states and territories to cut fuel taxes, and now extending that relief through to the 2nd of August. But also, perhaps more importantly, stepping up our engagement with our partners in the region and empowering Export Finance Australia to secure shiploads of additional petrol, diesel and fertiliser for our farmers, miners, truckies and tradies. If this conference had been held in March and Mr Croucher had interviewed me then, he may well have asked, what are you going to do about the fuel rationing? When will it start? Because that was the debate in this country before Easter. Some were critical of my address to the nation to say, calm the farm, we've got this, we've got a plan, go about your Easter, go and have your holiday, support those regional jobs. The whole of Canberra leaves and goes to Bateman's Bay and to the coast. You're only laughing because you know it's true. That was what was being asked in Parliament. You know how many questions I've been asked about the global fuel crisis in the last month? None. Because when you get it right, the world sort of moves on and pretends it's just happened. It hasn't just happened. The government's taken action. There's more fuel in Australia today than there was on February 28 when the Middle East conflict began. And can you imagine the prospects of some of our opponents in this place going to our friends in Asia, given their record about relationships with Asia, and saying, we need a hand. We need fertiliser from Indonesia. We need fuel from Singapore and Malaysia and Brunei. We need jet fuel from China. It would have been catastrophic. That is the real alternative in this country in 2026. A government that has the capacity to actually deal with the challenges of today and achieve outcomes, or a chaotic conglomeration of division between themselves, let alone getting out there and doing something to meet the challenges of today. Now, our budget put $10 billion into our fuel security plan, long-term, fuel security, storage and production, again making a difference. Our action on the cost of living continues next Wednesday, the 1st of July, less than a week to go. Another real increase in the minimum wage, another tax cut for every single taxpayer, with another one on the way on July 1 next year. When we were elected, the first marginal tax rate was 19 cents on the dollar. Next year, it will be down to 14 cents. That will work together with our instant tax deduction of $1,000, which not only simplifies the system and boosts productivity, it also means millions of low and middle income earners will get more of their money back at tax time next year. And these tax cuts will be followed by our new $250 Working Australians tax offset that will pass the Senate today. Part of the work we're doing to rebalance the tax system, better aligning the way that we treat income earned from work compared to income earned from assets. Because overwhelmingly, most Australians have nothing to sell but their time, nothing to give but their hard work. That's the real world that you won't see in tabloid papers over the last month. That's where most Australians are. That's how they earn a living. That's how they put food on the table, by going to work every day. And they deserve a tax cut and the opportunity to buy a first home. On the 1st of July, we're also expanding paid parental leave to a full 6 months and, of course, paying super on it now as well. We're making the 137 urgent care clinics that we promised and have now opened a permanent part of Medicare, taking pressure off public hospitals and ensuring more Australians than ever can get free health care closer to home. Next week will also mark 1 year since the launch of our Cheaper Home Batteries program. Now, our initial goal was 1 million new batteries by 2030. We've already seen an extraordinary 450,000 installed. Families and small businesses taking up the opportunity to permanently cut their power bills. And across the nation, it's overwhelmingly the regions and the outer suburbs that are leading the charge. Australia was already the world leader in rooftop solar. Our scientific breakthroughs made it possible, and our sunny skies make it practical. We're now ranked 3rd in the world for battery storage too, behind only the United States and China. A few more people there. On a per capita basis, we are way ahead of every single country in the world. And the benefits of Australians embracing this technology are beginning to flow through to the energy market as a whole, because what they do is they reduce demand in the evening peak. Now, the three right-wing parties have been pushing the same arguments against renewables with the same slogans for 2 decades now. And every year, as the technology gets more efficient and more affordable, that ideology becomes less convincing. Because on roads and rooftops right around our country, people are making practical choices, not making political statements. And it's not just individuals voting with their feet. Some of the biggest users of energy, from the Boyne aluminium smelter in Gladstone to Microsoft's new data centres in New South Wales, are embracing and investing in reliable, affordable renewables. We're determined to ensure that these large-scale projects continue to our national energy security and drive downward pressure on power bills for everyone. We'll continue to look at every responsible option to shield Australians from global uncertainty and to help people doing it tough. At the same time, we recognise that the frustration many Australians are feeling runs deeper than any particular cost pressure. It is the biggest sense that the economy isn't working for them, that their hard work isn't paying off, and that their children, the next generation of Australians, won't have the same opportunities that they had, that it will be harder for them to find a rewarding career, buy a home, start a family, build a good life. That sentiment hasn't sprung up overnight. It's built up over decades. And while there might be some who treat it as a political opportunity, I take it as a practical challenge, because Australians' frustration with the system is more than an emotional reaction or an ideological one. It's practical, it's tangible, and so are the solutions that we're providing. That starts with a wage you can live on, a job you can count on, being able to pay your bills, afford the medicine you need, and provide for your family. And it is the economic and social fabric that we take pride in as Australians, the things that bring us together as a country and set us apart from the world. Bulk billing through Medicare, quality public education, funding properly every single public school in the country, at every stage, of learning, dignity and security in retirement, the aspiration and achievement of home ownership. That's the true test for parties of government, the capacity to deliver real change when and where it really matters, making a positive difference to people's lives by undertaking the hard work of structural reform and tackling the big changes that have been put off for too long. That's why we're reforming the energy market, reforming aged care, reforming education, reforming employment services, reforming the National Disability Insurance Scheme, reforming skills and migration, and reforming the tax system. So they are right for the times and ready for the future. People can go a long way in politics for a long time by raging against the system that they're a part of, but none of that takes our country anywhere or changes anything. Real change means boosting wages and cutting taxes, powering new jobs and backing small business, making it easier to see a doctor for free, and making sure that every Australian child gets the best start in life, investing in the skills and technology that will enable our workers and businesses to shape the future, and helping the next generation put a roof over their head. This is the real change that matters to Australians. It is the real change that my government will continue to deliver. Thanks very much.
Oh, hey, good to see you. Take a seat. All righty. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me out there? Excellent. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name's Charles. I'm with the Nine Network. It's lovely to be here. And we're going to try and, as much as possible, get to your questions. So if you have one from the floor, whack your hand up. Otherwise, use the QR codes you have on the table. If you'd like to double the chances, whack your hand up and use the QR code, and that's the best way to do it. While that's happening, I'm going to start. Prime Minister, big day today.
Very big day.
Got a bit going on. You've been really critical of the Greens in the last 3 years and probably the last 30 years. It seems now, with today's deal and the pragmatism, I guess, shown by Larissa Waters, it might be a different kind of Greens you're dealing with. Does this give you hope that there could be more reform coming down the pathway in the next 2 years, given that it's been a bruising 6 weeks, but you're going to get away with a win?
Well, it will be a good outcome today, and I think one of the things that has happened, and something that I've been very explicit on in meetings that I've had, you know, across the spectrum. We've got 94 seats in the House of Representatives. We've got 30 now out of 76 in the Senate. From some of the rhetoric that's put, it's like, how dare you engage with more than your 30? Well, that's ridiculous. My door's open to anyone who wants to have constructive discussions. I think in the last Parliament, where the Liberals, the Nationals, the Greens and One Nation all combined to block public housing expenditure through the Housing Australia Future Fund is a good example, where the Liberals and Nationals, who built 373 social homes in the entire time that they were in government in that decade, well, they were just against it. The Greens said it's not enough. It's only $10 billion. Why not 20? Why not 30? You know, why not 100 billion? Some of those people aren't in Parliament anymore because they just said no to everything. And I think on this, we've still got a different position, very different position from the Greens. We support grandfathering is really important for these reforms. They don't. We don't yield from our position. But I think they have been responsible in not just saying no, not allowing what they regard as, you know, the perfect to be the enemy of the good. This is important reform. This has been a long time coming. It's not easy, and we knew there would be political blowback from doing it. But when you're confronted with the choice, which is a binary choice really, no one, and the context being, firstly, that no one is arguing the housing system was working at the moment. Like that debate isn't taking place, not even from the cheer squad, some of whom sit up in the gallery there for the right-wing parties. No one's arguing it's working at the moment. So you can argue about what the differences should be, or what the change should be, the reform should be. But to me to say the system isn't working, but I'm not prepared to do anything about it because someone will be critical. Well, that to me isn't acceptable. Like I'm in government to make a difference, not to just occupy the space. And that's what we were elected to do, and that's what we're doing.
I wonder if it makes you more ambitious or gives you more appetite to change things in the future. Particularly, one of the questions that's come through spoke about what Premier Malinowskis said last night at the CEDA audience. We spoke about some of the benefits and even unintended benefits of capping donations for election campaigns. Is that something you'd look at?
Well, we've done that. We had significant reform through the Parliament last time about capping donations. I think it's rather a bit strange that seems to be the motivation for people who are independents to form a political party, is to somehow try to...
South Australia is a very different model, though, don't they?
South Australia is a different model. We have got, I think, the balance right in improving transparency and disclosure provisions, in putting caps on expenditure. You know, those ads, I mean, I fear for the actual newspapers when they don't have those wraparounds in yellow and black that we see. I don't quite see the point, but that is living evidence that some people have just too much money, because those Clive Palmer ads, that achieved precisely, I don't think he got anyone elected at all last time round. But those double-page spreads, I don't know if anyone actually reads them.
As long as the checks keep clearing. So that's okay. One of the questions says, you spoke about energy transition. The battery program's been a huge success. It's expensive, but a huge success. What does success look like for you in this term alone when it comes to energy transition? Not long term, because we've all seen the speech about long term, but what does the next 3 years look like?
What it looks like is essentially the renewables rollout going from the amount of investment, which is there, the completion of projects that are underway is one thing. So you lift up the amount of renewables that are in the system. In the December quarter last year was the largest energy use in Australian history, but also the first time in any quarter that more than half of our energy was produced by renewables. Now, I've been in this building a while, and a long while ago I was the Environment and Climate Change spokesperson. I couldn't recall when the mandatory renewable energy target was 2%. 2. Not that long ago. Well, I've been in this building. It's now providing more than half of Australia's energy needs. And I think that what I really hope happens in a couple of years' time is that we end the ridiculous debate nature of some of it. I mean, people being opposed to the cheaper home batteries program, that actually, obviously, what it means is a whole lot of people are getting no bills at all, but it also is leading to cheaper bills for everyone because it takes pressure off the system, off the grid. And so the work that big business gets it, they're investing, and that we get that pipeline of investment flowing through quicker. I want to see faster approvals of many of the projects which are there, and I want us to be in a position where hopefully we move beyond some of the debate which is there. You know, we know that renewables backed with firming capacity from gas, backed by storage, is the way forward.
There's a question here about productivity. You've been a key focus. I think Jim Chalmers said it the day after the election, this was going to be the big focus. The question asks, with government funding for R&D either plateauing or in some cases going down, is it now up to the private sector to do the investment in research and development, or is there still a role for the CSIRO? Is there still a place that governments can step in, can boost productivity through that investment?
Well, it's a huge role, and we've provided increased funding for the CSIRO, but we've also changed the R&D tax incentive as well as part of the pro-business measures that we had in the budget. We have $3.5 billion of support for, that was before the recent changes have added to that, of support for small business and for boosting productivity, including through R&D. And so the private sector working, I mean, this institution, CEDA, is a great example of bringing together universities and our intellectual capacity with the private sector. It's one of the roles that CEDA plays that's so important, and one of the reasons why I'm a regular visitor here.
On the private sector and innovation, often it comes from small tech and startups. What's happening with the negotiations with startups? What do you see their role as being in the economy moving forward? Is it as it is now? Is it going to be more important? And if so, is there need to be more incentives to get young people or people with ideas and skills to take that risk?
It's going to be at least as important as it is today. And one of the things that will occur is that some of the innovations that are around now, like AI, will explode. There's a debate about AI going on, and my government's looking at it, and we're looking at, I'm looking at giving a major speech next month on AI and the government's approach. The debate can't be, is AI good or bad, a simple thing, and should we stop it? Because it's happening. You can't stop progress, as a fictional mayor said in that fantastic movie on the north coast of New South Wales. You can't stop it. You've got to shape it, or else it'll shape us. And so that's why we're engaged with international partners as well. It's one area where Australia can really punch way above our weight because of the advantages that we have here. So I think, when it comes to innovation and startups, what we've been good at and what's been ignored a bit in the current debate, Australia has always been good at innovation. Wi-Fi, the black box, all these things, penicillin, the whole range of research breakthroughs. What we have never been good at, historically, is commercialisation. So how do we get that there? How do we actually achieve... There's not a solar panel in the world that does not have IP produced at, to give a word to one of our sponsors here, UNSW and ANU. But what we did, as I said in the speech, we thought there was someone else, somewhere else will do it for us, and that's okay. Well, it's bullshit. We've got to stop it. We've got to make things here. We should have been a mass manufacturer of solar panels here in Australia. We're not. We're building that up, that capacity, but we should learn from that. So that in areas that we've been prepared to back in, that will grow in the future. And it mightn't grow tomorrow, but hydrogen is coming. These transformations are coming. How do we secure maximum value from those innovations?
We'll get to AI again shortly, but there's a question at table 6.
I'm glad you brought up AI. I had the question brewing before. I'm in my last semester of university, and we're already seeing less internships and grad roles, particularly in the commerce discipline. I just want to ask, where do your priorities lie when it comes to projecting the jobs of young people like us that did the right thing, went to university, looking to go out and get an office job? How do you look to protect those jobs while also making sure we don't miss out on the huge productivity that comes with AI?
one of the things to do is that when we look at how we shape the future, to acknowledge that with all previous technological breakthroughs as well, you will get some change in workplaces. Some jobs that exist today will not exist in 10 years' time. But there'll be new jobs, and the history is more jobs, if we get it right, created. So it's not a matter of just protecting all of the jobs that were there. You know, my team, my Mighty Bunnies, play tonight, and it used to be, when I grew up, at the flats near me, because they didn't get paid much, heaps of them worked as garbos. They did that to keep fit. They ran behind the trucks, they lifted up the garbage bins. Is it a good thing that now that's automated? You bet it is. And, you know, we need to acknowledge technology will keep going. And part of, I think, the challenge of decision makers of today is to recognise that some of the uncertainty and the break away from traditional political support and all of that is happening is a response by people who are going to, you will probably have 3 or 4 careers in your working life. When I did my HSC, on a Thursday was the last exam, I started work at the Commonwealth Bank on the Monday morning. I'd sat for a test with paper to go through, and I thought that was a job that was secure, that I could do for 20, 30 years, you know. And it's a very different world now, and that uncertainty creates anxiousness, and that makes easy answers and slogans perhaps more appealing to some, like it's a stop the world. I want to get off. And in some cases, it's not stop the world, it's let's pretend there was a world, you know, of monoculture that has never existed in this country, has never existed. So, you know, it's just a matter of, I think, making sure that government is brave enough to acknowledge change and to look after your interests, both in terms of work, how we deal with AI, how we deal with that change in order to shape it so that you have a future which, you know, will change from the time, you know, when I did an economics degree. The world is changing. How do we deal with that and take advantage of it? There's no country you'd rather be. I met with Anthropic this week. There is no country you'd rather be at the moment than Australia. We have everything under the ground, everything in the sky that the world needs. We have space, which is a big thing that countries to our north simply do not have. That provides us with an incredible opportunity, combined with our workforce, including the diaspora workforce and the connections with everywhere in the world. Like, we are just set up for a really dynamic and positive future. I'm really optimistic about your future because I'm really optimistic and positive about Australia's future.
Got time for a couple more questions, so if you have one, whack your hand up. I want to reach on something you mentioned there about a social compact. I think it's part of CEDA's philosophy. It was mentioned in Melinda's speech. There's something that Mike Burgess, the ASIO boss who gave his briefing last night to a few of us lucky enough to be there, he spoke about social media as sort of eroding that compact in Australia. Now, we always think of it as a security issue, that you start getting in this defensive crouch and everyone's a possible enemy. Economically, what does that do for a country?
It can really undermine, I think, the cohesiveness of a response. You know, when you can have people on social media who literally post budget, literally put things out that they said is not real and is not factual, but that's how you get attention. I thought that was a terrific moment where people who were running a campaign said that it wasn't based upon fact. Rather extraordinary, but at least honest, even if the campaign was based upon, you know, just trying to press buttons with people. I worry about polarisation. You know, the algorithms push people to more and more extremes. Don't want to get into a debate about 9 at the moment, but, you know, look at what's happened. You go down that road and you get further and further out on the edges of what is mainstream political debate in this country. And, you know, I think that that can have, you know, an impact. I met with people from the arts sector yesterday, from the creative sector. Tim mentioned a bunch of people here. One of I think their really powerful arguments is for more support for the theatre and live performance, is that, you know, and this is much better than us, you know, just putting out stuff online, having a real conversation with real people, changes the dynamic, and there's not enough of that. It is really easy. The social media ban was a really historic, when we did that, it was a pretty gutsy call to do it, because we thought the blowback from global, powerful corporations would be bigger than it has been, perhaps, because people have jumped on board. There's 16 countries are on board across Europe, US states, across the board, and that's because people are really conscious about the impact that social media is having. You know, our educational leap up from schools across the country that have banned mobile phones, the difference that it has made to behaviour, to learning, to all of that as well. And, you know, this is an example maybe of technology going ahead before society was ready to debate what it meant. And we need to really engage in a way that builds that social cohesiveness and not consensus, but having civil debates as well is something that's, you know, we're losing some of that capacity because of algorithms encourage that to occur.
It's beneficial. The final question's right at the back.
Hi, my name's Caitlin. I'm with Youth Decide. As a young person working in a youth organisation, what would you say to young people who, despite all the achievements your government has done in your terms, still feel disincentivised by politics, feeling like it's made at them and not with them? How would you address those young people?
I say that you have more of an incentive to engage than us old people, because by definition, the decisions that are made will have an impact on your life. They have a decision on properly funding schools, the universities accord, all of those measures that we've taken. Cancelling 20% of student debt, that helped 3 million Australians by an average of $5,500 each. The work that we're doing on housing is about young people. It's about saying, you know, that, you know, I was able to get into home ownership in my 20s, and talking and engaging with young people is that feedback. It must be said, with the support of their parents and grandparents, who just say, you know, my little Mary or little Ben has given up on getting into a home. We need to be really conscious about intergenerational equity for you and the sort of society that we want. And politics can sometimes be, difficult for people, and people don't want to pay attention. I get that, because they're busy with their lives. But it has an impact. If you get sick, whether the hospital is able to look after you, whether you can go into a Medicare urgent care clinic, the work that we're doing on mental health, the spike in youth mental health issues is, huge. And we're providing more resources for that, but also trying to tackle some of those debates about, why is this happening? What is it that's occurring in? But the young people I meet as well, and there's a distortion, because by definition, the people who are in this building or who I engage with are really interested in the state of the world, and that's a fantastic thing. So we need to reach out. One of the things that we've done is, we've got a youth minister, we've set up an office of youth affairs that wasn't there. It wasn't there in the former government, had been gotten rid of. One of my first engagements in politics was I was president of Young Labor during International Youth Year of 1985, just to give away my age. And I was a tiny little kid. We made part of what I was able to achieve, practical change. Went along to national conference. Bob Hawke and people didn't realise how much it was going to cost over the years, but I got what was Double J in Sydney, a National Youth Network, Triple J. Came from grassroots in order to have that engagement. It plays an important role in promoting debate and giving young people access to those big national questions as well, and has been really important. So how do we do that? How do we train young people as well for the jobs of the future, what we're talking about? We created Jobs and Skills Australia, that its job is to identify what are the jobs Australia needs in 5, 10, 20 years' time, to provide the training for that. 750,000 free TAFE places, are making an enormous difference. All of these things, often young people have been, I think, not given enough consideration. I think there is, some justifiable tension there about, boomers and, what they've had access to. I have people say, you got a free education, you got, thanks to Gough, you got all these things. We're struggling with the challenges before us. So continued engagement, and one of the fantastic things that happened on May 3, 2025 was Charlotte Walker getting elected to the Senate on her 21st birthday, and she's nailing it over there. Like, she is bringing energy and enthusiasm and that voice of young people directly to the heart of our government, and that's a great thing.
If they don't give you a seat at the table, make sure you bring a folding chair, as Shirley Chisholm used to say. Prime Minister, that's all we have time for. Thank you for this morning.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask you to stay there. Sorry, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your remarks, and also the frank answers to the questions posed from the audience. Can I just say really clearly that the comments you made about where else would you rather be than in Australia, and your optimism and enthusiasm for the future are certainly the themes that we embrace in all of our work, even when we might be a bit challenging in some of the conclusions that we draw about where we are right now. So thank you very much, and thank you, Charles. Can you join me in thanking both of them for their comments this morning? Thanks also to Indigenous Business Australia, of course, and David for your fantastic remarks at the beginning, centring First Nations development and prosperity in our conversations. Now, speaking of enthusiasm and a bright and optimistic future, it is our great pleasure now to present prizes to the winning students from the Economic Student Society Australia Public Policy Competition. This is a national student competition supported by CEDA that challenges university students to develop policy responses to the major economic and social issues facing Australia. And the Prime Minister has kindly agreed to present the awards both for last year and for this year. So I'm now going to invite to the stage some of our winners. Thank you. So I'm pleased to congratulate our 2025 winners who presented a paper focused on Australia's declining productivity growth and proposed two major reforms looking at foreign direct investment and improving productivity in the construction sector if ever there was a topical issue. From the University of Melbourne, congratulations to Angela Tang, Julia Ju, Sanjay Ravichandran and Thomas Wong. Our 2026 winners with a paper on accelerating approvals in Victoria, AI in the permitting process, again from the University of Melbourne. Congratulations to Lewis Shepherdson. And with a paper on solving the migrant skills mismatch, AI-enabled credential recognition from ANA Advisory, speaking of entrepreneurship, Anusha Sabu and Amaya Senaranate. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. If you want a moment of inspiration on the future of policy, please take the opportunity to speak to any one of the students. We asked a bunch of them to jump into a board meeting and they were quizzed relentlessly by the board and handled it beautifully. So please take that opportunity. Breakfast will be served shortly and at 9:45 we will ask you to leave the room because we've got a reset for the conference proper, but there'll be tea and coffee outside and we'll be back promptly at 10:15. Thank you again and please enjoy your breakfast.